Almost every time I post about how I don't like negative, overly negative clickbait travel content, there is someone who is like, well, you're negating victims' experiences. And so, you know what? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, because I'm not trying to negate victims' experiences. I am a solo woman traveler, and I understand that sharing information between solo women travelers about what is safe and what is not is very important. What I mean about negative clickbait travel experiences is, for example, people make a big deal about like the taxi drivers in Marrakesh, Morocco can be like try to overcharge tourists. That could be a video where you're like, hey, here's some tips for Marrakesh. By the way, I noticed the taxi drivers always want to overcharge tourists. Make sure that you stick around, don't pay them more than $15, blah, blah, blah. People will come on here because they know it gets views and go, I had the worst experience in Marrakesh, Morocco. I've never felt more scammed and unsafe in my life, because people will watch that. They're like, what happened? Let me see. And then the person's like, a taxi driver tried to overcharge me. And if you do your research and you Google like tips for traveling in Marrakesh, Morocco, there's like 1,000 articles and blogs and things that are like, you got to be careful about this and blah, blah, blah. And here's how to do the taxis or scammers. Or like not even scammers. They just try to overcharge tourists. But the problem for me is that happens, yes, in Marrakesh, Morocco. And now that there's 1 trillion people on the internet being like, oh, I've heard Marrakesh is so unsafe, because people make all this content about it. And then people are like, oh, that happened to me too, the taxi driver thing, because no one Googled it, I guess. And my thing is, you know the one place in the world where I've had a taxi driver try to overcharge me? It was Dubrovnik, Croatia. No one talks about how taxi drivers in Croatia, especially in the summer, in the peak summer when everyone's out there and traveling and partying, no one's like, oh, the Croatian taxi drivers are so scammy and unsafe and dangerous. And I just want to say, you know what the difference is between the taxi drivers in Croatia and the taxi drivers in Marrakesh? Their ethnicity. That's the difference. The culture. That's the difference. So I think people conflate culture shock and feeling uncomfortable with someone, put those together and make it into this whole overblown thing, when if it was someone that like a taxi driver was weird and scammy in the States or in London, you're might not going to make that video. I just want to put that out there. I do not mean SA. That should be obvious. I would never say you can research yourself out of being assaulted. That is not how that works. We all know that's not how that works. And we all know that it usually happens when it is someone who you trusted and is close to you. And that is horrible. Again, especially as a woman traveler, being harassed or being assaulted and feeling like you're bodily unsafe, that should be content that you can make and share with seriousness and levity, and everyone should take it seriously. But when people conflate their own culture shock and their own lack of research with danger when they are not in any danger, and it puts a country in a bad light, and especially when it's white people, because it's pretty much always white people, that's what I mean. So let's just clear that up.